Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Philly Fame Legends. We haven't done this in a while, but we're back in the saddle once again. With me, as always, is my brother from another Joey Marks from the Past and Have Sports Show, and I'm James Squirzer with you. Joey, how you been, buddy? Good to see you.
Been good, James. Been good. We got a couple episodes we're gonna record here that is very exciting to me. This episode we're gonna talk about Dick Allen, recently inducted into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. And if you ask, I guess about 90% or close to 90% of the players that are retired from Major League Baseball, they know how difficult it is to get into the Hall of Fame. And for Dick Allen, it's much deserved. And we're going to dive deeper into that in a couple minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the thing about too with Dick Allen is that long overdue is probably the right word
Yeah.
to say the word about Dick Allen because obviously he's one of the greatest Phillies players to ever live. Obviously was a great Phillies icon, but like I said, it's been long overdue since he had been into the Hall of Fame. I mean, obviously there was a lot of tensions with the league and also with the racial disparity and also like and all this other stuff. But we got a lot to get to on this very important episode. So where do we start with the great late Dick Allen, my friend?
So before we get really diving into it, for those people watching, please follow, like, and subscribe to Stream Punk Entertainment PA and to our sister station, Hardcore Sports Network. Follow us on all social media platforms and YouTube. And make sure that you don't miss any piece of content that comes out because we're coming out with stuff all the time. So, to get into Dick Allen, we have to kind of start with a little bit of a history lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say it like this. In the 1950s and 60s, there was the civil rights movement,
Right.
and it was something that was impactful in the city of Philadelphia. It was impactful in the country. Yeah, the in Major League Baseball, it had a lot to do with um how did the Negro League players get into the major leagues,
Mm-hmm.
and it gradually broke, with Jackie Robinson and what he did. And then later with players like we're going to discuss today with Dick Allen. Now,
Mm-hmm.
listen, all of us are Phillies fans, and the history is what the history is. It's not all the idea of history playing out in front of us, but
Mm-hmm.
in Philadelphia, we weren't the most accepting of the Negro players as they started to break into the majors.
Right.
We were one that was known for very much for being against them coming into the majors. Dick Allen broke that mold, especially for the Phillies, and it was very contentious. Dick Allen broke into the league in 1964, 63, 64. And this is a guy that joining the Philadelphia Phillies would kind of become that opening the door kind of person for guys that we would later go on to see, and Ryan Howard and Jimmy Rollins, and the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my first thing that I want to ask you, James, before we dive into Dick Allen's career stats and all of that, um, what's the part of all of this? Because I'm sure you have either watched or heard about some of the racial struggles that happened in the major leagues prior to Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier.
Yeah, I mean, you even brought up a very good point there about the civil rights and all the other stuff included. But yeah, it was a tough time to be sometimes, especially in that day and age of the league that was not not as compliant and as like you mentioned with J. Roll and Ryan Howard, like with that race cloud. Also, like the thing that sticks out to me the most with Dick Allen is that like once he met you, like he was like one of the nicest guys in the world. I mean, I remember there was a story out there that I actually found out about a couple weeks ago when he got enshrined into the Baseball Hall of Fame, that there was a kid probably like 14, 15 years old at the time, and he was asking for an autograph, and the only thing he got back in return was like, no, I want to shake your hand because like it's my way of like basically he was like so like kind-hearted. He was so like, I guess you could say, like once you met him, like it was like an icon, like how Ray Dininger was with Tommy McDonald. Like meeting your like best, it would be like kind of like what else would be like Brian Dawkins for an example, you know.
Yeah,
So it would be like you're meeting your favorite icon, and then 70 years later, and then like 60, 65 years later, and he was actually there at the Hall of Fame speech. That the same kid that asked for the autograph was there in attendance at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown
wow,
to see. I mean, that was amazing. I mean, just
yeah.
seeing that stuff. And the thing I'm really happy to see too is that um, as as a white guy and as we are both here, I mean, I can understand a little bit more of Dick Allen's style play and also what he meant to other players and also what he meant to like people like us who weren't like back in the day. Obviously, you think about the back in the day stuff that black and whites were not in the same schools. I mean, they were not in the
Yeah.
same they were not in the same like leagues. They were not in. I mean, it's sad because he had to go through that in that day and age, and also like we had to be one of those cities that like was against that. I guess that's the right word. But
Yeah.
at the same time, too, it's just I mean, it's like I said at the beginning of the program here. It's long overdue that he got into the MLB Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame. I mean, but more importantly than anything like that, it's just that like once you meet your icon and once you meet your great, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like it was kind of like our Jackie Robinson of that time, you know. Because like Jackie Robinson broke the barrier, and the same thing with Willie O'Ree with the NHL, and the list goes on and on about that too. But the thing that I would never forget too is that how much of a down to earth great guy he was, and even though he was never respected in the MLB and also never respected by like white players, for example, except for like the Mike Schmidts of the world that like took him in and welcome him in open arms. I mean, overall, the thing that is really astounding to me too is that like years later, he's still getting recognized as probably one of the greatest Phillies players of all time.
I mean, this is a guy in my mind that was a giant amongst, all the adversity. Now,
Hmm.
James, me and you kind of grew up in the same neighborhood. And
Sure.
before you were old enough to really realize, and you'll have to ask your dad about this, there
Hmm.
was what the media considered to be a race war
Hmm.
that was going on in our neighborhood. A
Hmm.
friend of mine, Chris Brinkman, was shot and killed in a botched robbery at the local pharmacy, mom and pop pharmacy in the
Wow.
neighborhood. And yeah, it was done by two black uh, teens, and they was probably young and dumb, and then there was other tension in the neighborhood because a black family had racial epithets put on, sprayed spray painted on their house
Hmm.
prior to Brinkman's death. And so there was a situation that at the corner of 29th and Tasker, literally in that intersection, at one point in time, you had the Ku Klux Klan coming from one area of the intersection, the Black Panthers coming on another area of the intersection, and the national U.S. National Guard coming into another section of that intersection, and they were all on like a collision course. And I remember news, local police. I remember like even like Newman, where me and James both attended,
Hmm.
um, basically said, do not, engage, do not exit your house, let the National Guard, let everybody that is in charge of handling this handle this. Do not engage. It was the first time, and we're talking about the 90s, the late 90s. So we're talking about almost 30 years after Dick Allen was in Major League Baseball when he
Right.
made that debut with the Phillies. And 30 years later in Philadelphia, you still had this racial tension. And in the majors, like I remember doing a little bit of digging uh historically on Jackie Robinson.
Mhm.
And one of the things that was noted in both the biopic and some of the journals the articles I've read is that the Phillies management that was around in the 1950s and early 1960s were the biggest agitators for Jackie Robinson to continue to push on and kind of raise Jackie's credibility, but it also, you know, put a black cloud over the Philadelphia Phillies organization because it made us look like we weren't accepting. Dick Allen was a guy who played third base and first base. This is a guy that much before we had Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, Dick Allen was that times Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. I mean, this is a guy who hit a tape measure home run of 500 over 525 feet.
Mhm.
Like that's absurd even for now. Like Kyle Schwarber would like I can't imagine how bad Tom McCarthy's voice would go if Kyle Schwarber hit over a 500-foot home run. Like he might break the sound barrier the way
Yeah.
that Tom McCarthy might scream. I mean, that's the amazing thing. And like you got to keep in mind something too.
Yeah.
Back in the 1960s, they didn't make ballparks like they do now, where they're much larger. They're like these big venues.
Right.
Before they were like these venues that it would they would be just large enough to house about maybe 11 to 12,000 people. You
Right.
got Citizens Bank Ballpark that can hold up to 45,000 people. So you have a much bigger venue. So for a person to be able to hit a 520 plus home run, you're
Mhm.
talking about that thing ending up on the street somewhere,
Right.
almost taking out a car or a person. And like that's not even an exaggeration. That's probably closer to fact.
Mhm.
This is what with his career, he batted 292, 353 home runs, over 1,000 RBIs. This is a guy that, batted for power when power wasn't, normal. Like
Right.
we look at what power is now. There's currently 9 different active players in the majors that have 350 home runs and more plus.
Yeah.
Back in Dick Allen's days, that wasn't the case. I mean, yeah, sure, you had guys that were hitting the cover off the ball, but Dick Allen was one of those guys that, was not predicated as a person that coming out at least as a person that was going to do that. Again, it's the idea that these Negro League players weren't given the right platform or opportunities. The fact that Dick Allen in 1964 won Rookie of the Year ought to tell you everything that he was about because he was about trying to make an impact quickly. James, let me ask you something. Hearing some of the numbers that I threw out,
Hmm.
292 batting average, 353 home runs, and over 1,000 RBIs with
Amazing.
his career best tape measure home run recorded at 525 plus feet. What is your takeaway from a guy, especially with what you know now? what you know about baseball now, about baseball players, about analytics, the era that we live today, that wasn't then. So what we know today, like what do those numbers tell you?
Well, it's interesting, Joe, because you think about the times when Dick Allen played. I mean, it was just a like once you see him come up the plate, it's like you're like kind of feeling like you have a Kyle Schwarber in you, like you expect a home run every chance you get, or probably you see like a Jimmy Rollins with the RBIs, or a Ryan Howard again, like a home run like in the third deck. It's I mean, say for example in this day and age, if Dick Allen played in this day and age with that number, I could say right now. I mean, there's a lot of baseballs that have left. I mean, I wouldn't say Citizens Bank Park, but if this was like something like the Natural, like he would probably hit the home run and then it would go out of Citizens Bank Park, then probably stay in the ballpark. Because like usually, like when someone hits like a home run, like a big home run, it would be like a third decker, and I mean it would be close to a third deck sometimes. I mean you'll be like once in a blue moon that it'll happen like that a home run will hit in the third deck. But if the way Dick Allen was, like hitting the cover off the ball, it would be like you
It would
probably
be like hitting that wall in Ashburn Alley,
yeah.
furthest wall. It would be like if the ball traveled straight away, it would
Hmm.
be hitting that brick wall and bouncing off of it. And that wall has to be at least
Right.
close to 500 feet.
Yeah.
And so you're not talking like it's gonna creep down and hit the bottom of the wall. No, that thing might still hit with
Yeah.
height on
Yeah.
that wall. And so, the other part of this is that, I want to throw other numbers out at you. Seven-time All-Star,
Mm.
900 plus OPS. This is a guy, he in his rookie year led the NL in runs scored and triples.
Mm.
This is a guy now you're talking about a guy that's playing a very difficult position with third base because we call it the hot corner for a reason.
Hmm.
He also, not only had the power, but to get triples, I don't care what era you're in. To get triples is very difficult in baseball.
Yeah.
This is a
No,
guy
you're
who
right.
led it. This is a guy who led the league in triples as a rookie. This
Wow.
is a guy that could have power and speed. He was the best combination of both that thunder and lightning kind of perspective. And you know, to think that this guy would not have gotten an opportunity and would have been stuck in the Negro Leagues and never really heard of or heard from if
Hmm.
not given the opportunity. Now, look, there were a lot of people that felt like Dick Allen was the Phillies' way of kind of trying to turn the page about, from how they treated Jackie Robinson. Now,
Right.
that could be true, but the here and the now is that Dick Allen knew what he represented, just like Jackie Robinson did. But Dick Allen knew what he represented, and he carried that on in his career. He didn't just fix and revitalize the Philadelphia Phillies organization.
Hmm.
He actually went on to play for the Chicago White Sox in 1972 and revitalized that organization. Now, look, we nowadays don't usually put Chicago White Sox in any kind of high accolades. But, the guys like Dick Allen would go and again, I say he was kind of like a giant amongst boys.
Yeah.
He knew that he had to stand firm, stand tall. And being able to do that, I have to imagine would be infectious in the clubhouse. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I it's a very good point because you think about the day and age of baseball, and especially with the how many triples he had in a rookie. I mean, that's pretty superb in my opinion. I mean, that would be like Jimmy Rollins. Every time he comes up to bat, it's a triple. Like every chance he gets, it's the same kind of problem. Okay, same kind of thing he did back in 2007 with the 2020 and 20. but at the same time too, just trying to do that for a full 162 of them. I mean, after a while, I mean, in this day and age, I mean, I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about. If you actually could do that in this day and age, and you hit a triple every chance you get, like it's kind of like majority of the time you want the pitcher to just intentionally walk you just to like to avoid a batter, just to avoid like someone to hit. I mean, it's the same thing with Schwarber with the leadoff home runs every
Uh,
once in a while. But at the same time too, it's like it's I mean, yeah, sure, this is a different day and age of baseball than it was back in the 1960s, 1970s gonna admit. But overall, I mean, his stats are there. I mean, even though it's a different time of baseball that we are living in now, I mean, the stats are still there. I mean, his accolades are still one of the best, probably Phillies, and probably one of the best MLB players of all time.
I mean, with his stats and what we are just able to kind of analyze from the stats alone, the idea that he, exemplified some of what it was to be a good and great baseball player.
Hmm.
James, we have footage of
We
Dick
do.
Allen and his career highlights. Why don't we play that right now?
Sure, absolutely. So this is what happened in 2020. So obviously no crowd. I mean, it's a shame there was no crowd in this to see Dick Allen's accolades on this. So this is a tribute to his montage of his illustrious MLB career and his Phillies career with the Fighting Phils. So I guess this it started out like we talked about earlier when it started out. I guess in the 1960s, as he as I guess this was spring training of like when he was a rookie. There is no sound to this, so obviously I gotta probably be like a little bit like John Facenda here. So if if I
Good
could,
pull. That's a good pull by you.
yeah. So this is I guess what we were talking about earlier is that like coming up to the majors was something big that Dick Allen was trying to do. So this is I would guess this is his rookie year as a Philly. So like this was I guess he was still but I mean, I don't know if there was like a minor league system back in the day. Now this is Dick Allen talking to stuff about history making, history in the history being made rather about obviously the color barrier that we talked about earlier with Dick Allen being the first of many players coming from the Negro League, coming from the to become Phillies. Obviously, I mean, I know it was a different. I mean, it's kind of like we had like Hank Aaron like during the break when he was with the Braves during that era with the racial disparity and also how they, like I said, like before, it was like, I mean, the reason, I mean, I just feel so bad that how they treated him, how they treated Hank Aaron and all the others. It was just, it's kind of sad how we went through that. And sadly, believe it or not, it's still like it's going on today, gonna admit.
Yeah, and like here's the thing is you have to kind of imagine like where we would be as a franchise or where any of these teams would be as franchises if it weren't for guys like Jackie Robinson and Hank Aaron and Dick Allen. But those guys who had the courage to stand up against the noise and took a lot of abuse for it. Don't get me
Hmm.
wrong. They took a
Yeah.
lot of heat for it
Hmm.
and still kind of, persisted on. The idea that Dick Allen in the city of Philadelphia, which was, this hotbed, the melting pot, if you will, of different ethnicities and different cultures and whatnot, and it wasn't always easy to fit in. It wasn't always easy to, you know, feel like you belong. But Dick Allen just again kind of I think the reason why that story of that child that wanted to, get an autograph, but Dick Allen said, "No, no, I want to shake his hand."
I would
Was
rather shake your hand instead, you know?
yeah, because I think he wanted to convey that I'm a human. I'm not
Right,
just a signature.
right.
I'm a person. And I think that humanizes, especially from their perspective, because it's like you said with the Negro League. Some of those guys never got the opportunity like Jackie Robinson, Dick Allen, and Hank Aaron. Like none
Hmm.
of them got that opportunity.
Right.
And they never got out of the Negro League. And we don't know what hidden gems we would have missed out on. I mean, think about it. If Dick Allen would have never made it to the majors, we would have never seen some of the 353 home runs and the 525 plus foot home run. Like we wouldn't see the power, the speed, the majesticness, the ability that Dick Allen showed each and every time. Later on, the Philadelphia Phillies would retire Dick Allen's number. James, you said you have footage on that?
Yes, we do. I got. There's like it's still a montage. The montage is still going. It's like
Okay.
it's still like. I mean, we're halfway there.
Okay.
Now it's just other players like Willie Mays talking about his accolades along with others. The thing that I was really that caught me by surprise when he came to the Phillies, back to the Phillies. I think it was when he came back to the Phillies, and when it was at the vet, and there was a fan count. There's like a big billboard that came out and said "Welcome home, Dick Allen." And if that didn't give you like the feels of like that the Phillies fans respected his game, it's just like it makes you realize. It gets you a little teary eyed, especially how like how welcome after it was after that civil rights, and also how after the fact was they still welcomed him in like he was like one of their sons, and
Well,
that's the most nostalgic thing about it too.
I look at it this way too, because you put in perspective that Dick Allen played in the 60s and 70s, but then you brought it up earlier that Mike Schmidt kind of like welcomed him in with open arms, like
Hmm.
befriended Dick Allen. John Kruk did too. You're talking about two guys in Mike Schmidt and John Kruk that are way after Dick Allen's career.
Hmm.
Like you have Schmidt that's known for being in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. You have John Kruk that's the late 80s, early 90s. So you have these other generations and white athletes, mind you. But you have these generations later of Phillies players that not only respect Dick Allen, but praise him for his courage, his dignity, the way he carried himself, the way he represented the Philadelphia Phillies organization. That
Hmm.
guy could have, for all of what the Phillies stood for in the late 50s, early 60s,
Hmm.
Dick Allen saw it as an opportunity to go and kind of set the world on fire in Philadelphia, basically.
Right.
And it changed the way the Philadelphia organization went going forward. I mean, look at some of the people that we would have never had the opportunity to ever have got, had the pleasure of gracing a Philadelphia Phillies uniform.
Right.
And it's amazing. And yeah, there's still these in this country in sports we are still dealing with racial sexual, like we are still dealing with discrimination on different levels um in the sports world, in the regular world. And there are still these pioneers that are out there, much like Dick Allen, that are trying to stand tall like giants through the and be courageous through the adversity of all of it.
Yeah.
And, Dick Allen was proof that he not only just wanted to be a good ball player, he wanted to be kind of a role model for any other, whether it's a black athlete, a Latin athlete, a white athlete, it didn't matter. He just wanted to be a role model to
Right.
them. And I think that's where that story of I want to shake his hand instead. That's
Yeah.
where that really kind of shines through.
Yeah. That's it. And instead of being an autograph that could be sold off to something in the near, like,
Hmm.
and a future reference, like shaking somebody's hands. It's just like you said, like a show a sign of respect. Like showing a
Well,
sign, so it's a sign of respect. You know.
I brought this story up a couple times before. In the 1996 All-Star game,
Yeah.
they had a fan fest, and my mom took me to the fan fest, and I met Steve Carlton inexplicably, not on like a booth, not like in a meet and greet, none of that. I didn't pay for any of that. Um, he was walking in with Scott Palmer, and I just knew he was important. He looked important, but I
Mhm.
was playing a game. He was looking over my shoulder. I turned around. We got to talking, and he shook my hand, and we had a conversation. When I went home and told my dad, you would think my dad, like, I met the president or something. My dad was like flipping out, and
Right.
I didn't realize who I had met. Now, I could have gotten with that conversation. I could have easily have gotten a Steve Carlton autographed baseball, which would have been worth a good chunk of money nowadays. That's great. But
Sure.
you know what? I have this great story instead. And that I can't sell off, but that I can hold and cherish for the rest of my life. That in some way I held a conversation, a sports conversation with one of the greatest pitchers to ever play for the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, that says an awful lot sometimes. You meeting these people, sometimes meeting these people is is just enough. It's the highest amount of honor. It's
Mhm.
you brought it up earlier. If we met Brian Dawkins, if we had the privilege to be able to have Brian Dawkins on our show or like have a conversation with Brian Dawkins, my feeling is first off, I don't know if we could contain our excitement,
Yeah.
but the other part of it is we would know how privileged we would be. In Brian's perspective, he knows, okay, I'm a role model. Yes, I'm a former athlete, but doesn't always expect that he's going to get that type of reaction from the fan base. But it's what these guys mean to
Yep.
the fan base. And Dick Allen was proof of that far after his career was over.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go, we got one more piece of footage here that we like to do here. So this is Dick Allen, retirement day. So this is his jersey retirement. So um, I guess so. Apparently, this was in 2020. So this was like COVID. So no big. So there was not a lot of fans in the stands. And the best way to go out was Mike Schmidt, hanging his number 15 up to the rafters. And what better way to show off in style than that one guy that was his close friend for him for years was Mike Schmidt honoring Dick Allen's number 15. And there it is, boys and girls. Dick Allen's number 15 being high on the rafter, high up the rafters, and that number 15 will never be worn by a Philly again. Perfect ceremony and a perfect ending to an illustrious career, especially with Mike Schmidt being the one to raise that banner for his good friend Dick Allen.
Greatness of a third baseman to another greatness of a third baseman. You know, like you
Exactly.
had one great one honoring another. And like that's the difference. The Philadelphia Phillies do not retire a lot of numbers. And,
Hmm.
for Dick Allen's number to be retired, that not just says how much the Phillies organization, cherished Dick Allen, but how the Phillies organization tapped into understanding how much this city loved Dick Allen.
Hmm.
And sometimes that matters far more than what stats you put up on the field. Not that Dick Allen put less stats up on the field. He did so much. Some of the things that I feel like he would be good at now would he would still have the power, which would translate to today's game. He would have the speed, which would translate into today's game.
Hmm.
And the idea that this is a guy that would have been more personable to the fan base, which absolutely translates to today's game. So, Dick Allen, a legend, an icon, a trailblazer. I got to ask before we go, James,
Hmm.
I'm going to do the thing we usually do, and I'm going to ask one word in your mind to describe Dick Allen in your perspective. What would it be?
Legendary. Legendary. I mean, there's no word to describe his what he did with the Phillies, obviously, and what he did with the state of Major League Baseball. I mean, the thing that I've never forget what Dick Allen's career was. Is that even though there was it was a long time ago, and sadly, it's still going on today. But I wish there was one thing that we can always be. Walk a mile in Dick Allen's shoes for once in a while to see, just like be more. I mean, of all the crisis that's going on in the world right now, be more like Dick Allen. So my that would be my final toss off. So here's my salute to you, Dick. Congratulations on your MLB, your final, your um. Yeah, I mean, it's just yeah. I mean, just congratulations on being a part of the Baseball Hall of Fame. And my final word would say is the man was just legendary. Enough said.
So my word is going to be pioneer because
Mm,
this is a guy who pioneered along with guys like Jackie Robinson to have that color barrier not just die in the storm. You know, like I have learned in my time as, you know, a history person, a history buff,
mm-hmm,
that sometimes these movements die on the vine.
mm-hmm,
And, you know, guys like Dick Allen and Jackie Robinson and the, you know, Hank Aaron, and the list goes on and on.
mm-hmm.
This is a guy that was a pioneer in this city,
Right.
that he pioneered on a local front the equality for African Americans in Major League Baseball.
Yep.
And my salute to you, Mr. Allen, is you are congratulations on getting into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Well deserved, long time coming, and no one deserves it better. And no one, you know, you should be honored more than just, you know, as this one-off episode, but you should be honored on an annual basis because being a pioneer in this city doesn't come around very often.
Mm-hmm.
And sir, you were one of the pioneers for African Americans in baseball players in this city.
Yes, sir.
So that's going to do it for our show. This episode was brought to you by Streampunk Entertainment. If you want to follow, like, and subscribe, hit that button on Streampunk Entertainment PA, and also check out our sister station, Hardcore Sports Network. For James Scorza, I'm Joe Marks. This is the Patterson Ave Fanatics, and we will see you later.